Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. So I want to get to your whole take on what's happening in Israel, but can I just ask a stupid layperson question about this,
Sure.
what you referred to here? If you're trying to win any hearts or minds for the Palestinian cause, why they would do this degree of barbarism?
Sure. Well, first, let me just put this into perspective for those of you who don't know, even though you've been hearing about me on Ukraine for the last 17 months. This is what I did for nearly 40 years, which was work that particular part of the world. My first 10 years in U.S. intelligence was working against, Hezbollah, Hamas, other Palestinian terrorist groups in the Eastern Mediterranean. And let me tell you something. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed, and to give you an answer to your question, is that Hamas was always one of the most radical Palestinian groups. When the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank was sidelined, that was Yasser Arafat and all the old OG terrorists who were ready to negotiate, Hamas got itself elected in an election and then never relinquished power for 17 years.
Yep.
They put Gaza essentially into a stranglehold of only Hamas being the only type of resistance you could have. To a large block of people and to a large block of young men who have nothing to do and dispossessed, this seems heroic. But what they did was they did the ISIS-fication of Hamas. They decided that when they went across that border, instead of attacking the Israeli army, they mass murdered every person, not Jew, every person they came into contact with. They are no better than ISIS. They have adopted all of ISIS's tactics.
Yeah.
Beheading children is a real thing. The journalists went into that village yesterday. They saw the cribs. They saw the places. I mean, I'm going to have, I'm writing furiously on Substack. I can barely keep up with it because I can't put anything out on Twitter other than warnings and shouts because I have leagues of pro-Hamas, pro-Moscow, pro-neo-Nazi people coming on there and just jamming up all the works. So I have a photograph of a child's baby carrier that was in a car where it is clearly the child was shot right through the heart. And the baby carrier's covered in blood. What Hamas did was they've declared themselves enemies of the world, not enemies of Judaism, not enemies of Israelis. They have decided they want to be ISIS. They're going to get the ISIS treatment now, which is total, inevitable, destruction of every one of them. That organization, when this is done, will cease to exist, and it will be, literally, on the exact same level as ISIS. It will be a world effort.
Yeah. By the way, I have only dumb civilian questions today, dumb layperson questions for the terrorism expert. But I mean, again, what I think your explanation would go to the point that Hamas is not they don't want peace. They don't want a two-state solution because that's what I was saying is even as propaganda, why are you putting out this? Yeah, exactly. So, right, they want every Jew dead. I mean, so that's not, well, anyway, it goes to your piece initially about what was happening. I think Netanyahu's awful. Netanyahu's awful and Hamas is awful. I mean, you wrote a piece about how this is Israel's intelligence failure, period. Of course, the right wing here on Q are all trying to blame Biden. And, you talk to us a little bit. I read from your piece on Monday that you just said, given the scope, complexity, and impact of this attack, the incursion is a massive failure of Israeli intelligence. Despite pundits who are tempted to call this an American failure, it is not. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Look, that's because all of our intelligence at the street level about Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, threats which may emerge out of eastern Egypt, comes from one of two sources: Israeli intelligence. They have three intelligence agencies: the Mossad, which does their deep overseas and deep human intelligence activities equivalent to the CIA; the Aman, which is Israeli Army military intelligence, which was surrounding Gaza; and then Shin Bet, which is the Israeli equivalent of the FBI that does all contact and human intelligence and signals intelligence against Hamas. in every other Palestinian group and any Palestinian within Israel, and all of them failed. That's why, I'll tell you why they failed. I wrote a book long ago. Actually, I have a copy sitting right here for those who are here. First book I ever wrote, the Terrorist Recognition Handbook. And there's an entire section in there about how terrorists communicate when they want to disappear from the face of the earth. What they do is they work in compartmented closed cells where only they know the other members of that cell. Then the team leader communicates through a cutout to the command element. With Hamas, it was exactly like it was done in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. They didn't use telephones. And when they used telephones to create strategic deception against the Israelis. So they knew everyone's phone is tapped. The Israelis had the entire place tapped. So they would go on the phone and they would say, hey, we're just going to do, our regular mobile training. They lied about the locations of their rockets. Every person that the Israelis send in as a spy is a Palestinian that was captured at a checkpoint. So they go home and they tell their mom, the Israelis tried to turn me as a spy. Hamas says, okay, great, take the money. Keep reporting all of this, ridiculous stuff that we're going to give you to report, and we'll deceive the Israelis, and then you can get a weapon and come with one of the terrorist cells.
Yeah.
Look, there could be 500 terrorist cells, and if they don't communicate electronically, it doesn't matter. You're never going to detect it.
Right.
I'm not joking. I spent years trying to collect electronically in the Eastern Mediterranean, and trying to identify the location of 76 American and other Western hostages over 10 years. If you talk in a shisha bar in a corner without an electronic device next to the hookah, you're never going to know what they say.
Yeah. Well, your larger point, you said, again, this is an Israeli failure on a massive level. It reveals that their oppression of the Palestinian National Authority in the West Bank likely closed intelligence-sharing loops that could have provided indicators of a possible secret plan by Hamas. Israel's sharp veering to the right, backing settlers to seize Palestinian lands extra-legally, indiscriminate killing of thousands of civilians every time there's an uprising, have hardened anyone in the Palestinian community to ever breach the wall of silence.
Never. Never. It's mafia-level omerta. So they would rather die than talk.
Yeah. So I have so many. Here's my next dumb civilian question. So these hostages, of course, maybe I've seen too many movies and I picture a joint Mossad Navy SEALs operation to free the hostages. Tell us why. I know that other experts have said this is just incredibly difficult to do in this situation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about it as the person that developed the U.S. Navy and Special Operations Hostage Survival School, where we simulated Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and other terrorists for 5 years in a top secret program. The most dangerous part of hostage survival is always the armed recovery. And it's one thing to have an individual hostage. And like I said, I spent the better part of a decade trying to locate hostages. We've located none of them. Our most successful releases were negotiations carried out by the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was a hostage, and had been released in Lebanon. This is going to come down to negotiation, because you're talking about a city, 140 square miles, catacombed with hundreds of underground tunnels. The only way hostages are going to be released is if the Israeli army flows through the terrorists so fast that the hostages aren't moved, killed or injured, and are stumbled upon after the Israelis flow through. So it's the old line from Captain America, when Captain America says to the general, hey, what are you going to do about all those captive soldiers? And the general says, win the war. Yeah. Well, that's how it's going to be done. No one's going to be fast roping or flying helicopters in there, because they will get shot down. There will be a massacre, and the Hamas has been preparing for this for years.
Oh, hi. I'm here with sexy liberal John Fugelsang, wearing my Los Angeles sexy liberal shirt. Oh, my God. We have an LA show coming up October 21st. But how else could you see it, John?
How else else could you see it? I'm so glad you asked. For a limited time, you can see the show live via pay-per-view if you go to sexyliberal.com. All the laughs, you'll miss nothing.
I can stream it from all around the world?
All around the world, in your car, while you're driving. Watch it at home.
Sexyliberal.com, yeah.